It kind of seems like Challengers just came out yesterday, but Luca Guadagnino is back at it, and his latest film is queer. It is queer both in name and in content, as it follows Daniel Craig, the legend, of course, as an American expat living in Mexico City, kind of floating around the bar scene, spending time with college students and barkeeps, and maybe falling in love or at least becoming infatuated with a younger man. This younger man named Allerton, played by heartthrob Drew Starkey. This younger man, alongside Daniel Craig's character known as Lee, are both drug users, and we kind of follow them through their escapades, both drug and sexual. Now, I hate to do this so early in the video, but please do subscribe if you haven't already. I will be at the Toronto International Film Festival providing some of the first reviews in the world. This one is premiering at Venice a week earlier, but still, if you're looking for reviews of films like Queer, other projects like Saturday Night or Night Bitch, I will be posting some of the first on YouTube. If you don't subscribe, that's okay. I'll just be really, really sad. But anyway, this film is adapted from a William Burroughs novel of the same name, kind of a follow-up to his very short, somewhat incomplete novel in Junkie, which also followed Lee character on his search for drugs. And both of these novels are, depending on who you talk to, semi-autobiographical from both a drug use perspective. William Burroughs was a heavy drug user, but also from a perspective of sexual exploration and sexual identity. The novel, when it first came out in 1985, was not widely embraced, which is not surprising given the time and given the content of the novel. While by today's standard of very popular smut novels, the sexual content within Queer is actually not that detailed and graphic, but nonetheless, at the time, any sort of description between two men was difficult to get seen very widely. Still, it found its audience, and this is not the first attempt at an adaptation. I was able to find as early as 2000 evidence of an adaptation in the works from Steve Buscemi, and in fact, there is further evidence that a screenplay was written, that there was even a table read of the screenplay in the early 2010s, and then it kind of just fell apart, and I'm not entirely sure what happened to that original adaptation, but we are back at it and actually have a film coming out from esteemed director Luca Guadagnino. I imagine that most folks know who Luca Guadagnino is. He is a very renowned director, particularly in recent years, although he's been doing this for a while. He broke out into, I guess you could say, mainstream success with Call Me By Your Name, which also launched Timothée Chalamet into kind of the stratosphere where he is currently living. More recently, of course, he directed Challengers, but he's been putting out work since the 90s with his debut, The Protagonists, starring Tilda Swinton, and has created a number of short films, even some documentaries, and work for television. So this is not his first rodeo. Of course, a lot of Guadagnino's work centers on, or at least revolves around in some fashion, this queerness, this openness to sexuality that many of his characters kind of embrace directly or indirectly. And with an adaptation of Queer, it is sure to obviously continue that kind of exploration. The writer here is not as well known as Guadagnino, but is certainly rising in prominence. I'm talking, of course, about Justin Kuritzkes. I have sort of developed a little bit of a fascination with his story because it is so interesting to me. He is an accomplished playwright at a fairly young age. He is married to the extremely talented Celine Song, who directed Past Lives, and the character in Past Lives, the protagonist's husband, was of course a version of Kuritzkes, but he started out as the potion seller on YouTube, and I've played this video a few times when talking about him, but I just find it so fascinating, kind of moving from potion seller to accomplished playwright and now to an accomplished screenwriter. I guess this is a message to never let anyone minimize your art.
Hello, potion seller. I am going into battle, and I want your strongest potions. My potions are too strong for you, traveler.
He wrote challengers for not Guadagnino specifically. He wrote it on spec, and then eventually it became attached to Guadagnino, but it was not a collaborative writing process. And I will admit, don't hate me, I was not a huge fan of challengers. It was a little bit too much show and not quite enough substance for me. But of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Still, I am confident in Kuritzkes' ability to write, and I'm interested here in particular because he wrote this script with Guadagnino in mind. In fact, it was Guadagnino who approached him while filming Challengers, essentially gifting him a copy of Queer, saying something along the lines of, read this tonight and let me know if you want to write it for me. And that's pretty doable because Queer's a short novel at around 200 pages. Kuritzkes did just that, and he was fully on board. What interests me here is that during the writing process, Kuritzkes acknowledged the influence of Guadagnino, having worked with him on Challengers and understanding his style and his vision. So this is not a script just written for any director. It's written to match and to work fluently with Guadagnino's voice. He's talked openly about his respect for Guadagnino and about trying to be a bridge between Burroughs and Luca and doing his best to stay true to both of their voices. All right, who are the stars? Of course, the big name here is Daniel Craig of Bond, Legacy, and more recently in the very beloved Knives Out Glass Onion pairing. This project might seem strange on the surface for James Bond to be playing this character, but Daniel Craig, kind of like Guadagnino, has been in so many projects that maybe folks aren't aware of, including a lot of smaller pictures as well as very intimate work on stage. So despite his power as James Bond, he is certainly capable of portraying the subtleties in a character like Lee here. His co-star is not as well known, at least to me. I've seen him in some things like The Hate U Give, but he is most known for his work in Outer Banks. This is, of course, is Drew Starkey, who I guess is a bit of a heartthrob. Can't really deny that. But what I love here is that neither Craig nor Luca Guadagnino knew of Outer Banks at all or really knew anything about Drew Starkey. He auditioned just like any other actor. He sent in an audition tape. Guadagnino loved it. Craig was already attached to the project. Guadagnino sent it to Craig, and he said, apparently, according to GQ, he just said, "That's the guy." And the rest is now history. Some other supporting performances come from Jason Schwartzman, who's, of course, known for his frequent collaboration with director Wes Anderson. We have Lesley Manville, who's an accomplished and acclaimed English actress. We have Henrique Zaga, who is lesser known. I'm not familiar really with his work. He's a Brazilian actor who's had roles in more teen television projects like Teen Wolf and 13 Reasons Why. And then we have a couple interesting supporting performances here from Omar Apollo, who is a Grammy-nominated singer making their acting debut, alongside David Lowery. Yeah, the director of A Ghost Story and The Green Knight. So interested to see what role he plays in this one. So, what should you be expecting from Queer? Well, as the name suggests, it is a queer film. It is openly embracing the character's sexuality, although it is interesting. Drew Starkey's character, Allerton, claims to not be gay, and that is a part of the plot, at least in the novel. We'll see how that's portrayed on screen, but it is apparent that there are going to be some sex scenes here, which really should not be a problem in 2024, but I'm sure that some folks will take issue. And I imagine that if you were someone who thought that Challengers was really spicy, I think Queer will probably take it up a notch. Luca Guadagnino has talked openly about this being his most personal film. Again, maybe more of an exploration of his journey, of his sexuality, although, of course, this has been ingrained thematically through some other projects as well. It was not an easy adaptation. The original story is not, I would say, made to be a perfect film adaptation. And interestingly, the first cut of this project was over 3 hours. It has since gone through 2 subsequent major edits, the first one bringing it down to about 2.5 hours, and now apparently it is sitting at right around 2 hours, 15 minutes, but that 3-hour plus cut is out there somewhere, and I would have to imagine that we'll get a director's cut at some point. It's funny, I was just about to hit record on this video, but then I decided to look at my phone. I was planning to say Queer does not have a distributor. It is a difficult film and might not be accessible to the masses, but hopefully by the end of the Venice Film Festival, it will be picked up. But good thing I looked at my phone because it has been picked up by A24. I'm super interested to see how they market this film and when they plan on making a wider release. What else should we expect from this film? Well, there has already been Oscar buzz for Daniel Craig's performance. In fact, the head of the Venice Film Festival, Alberto Barbera, has openly talked about 2 performances from lead actors from films that are playing at Venice. Joaquin Phoenix in the upcoming Joker film, and Daniel Craig. He has said essentially that he would be shocked if neither of them were nominated for an Academy Award. So that's something to keep an eye on. Daniel Craig, despite his very successful career, has never received such a nomination. As I mentioned, this one is getting its world premiere at the Venice Film Festival on September 3rd. I will personally be catching it at the Toronto International Film Festival less than a week later on September 9th, so be sure to follow along in order to get a review of Queer. There is yet to be a wide release announced. Of course, A24 just picked up the film, but most projects that have a distributor and play in this kind of fall festival circuit come out in early 2025 in order to qualify for award season, so it's something to keep an eye on. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please do subscribe. I will be putting out a ton of videos, reviews for the Toronto International Film Festival. So if you are interested in these new films and want to hear about them before others, then do subscribe. Also like, comment, do those things because they make me happy. And that's just a good thing to do. Cheers.